I thought what I would do today is a little bit of scene setting, because I'm sure not many of you really are aware of what we're doing, and then explain why we think what we're doing here is relevant in the context of tall buildings. So let's start right at the beginning. It is one of the largest art and culture projects worldwide. The government very, I think, carefully considered what to use the site for, and they wanted us to create this vibrant cultural district and quarter for the city. We want to be not just a platform for local arts and culture, but really to present ourselves as a regional and international centre. To do that, we've got to put a collection of different facilities together, and we must provide not just the built space, but also the green areas that are very important to the development of this whole district. And any of you who've looked out will see one of the challenges in a high-density, tall building environment is the green space. To make the areas around you at a more personable, a more humanistic level. And I think this is where one of the issues that we have to bring in. So, just to recap what Tony said, don't forget we're talking about reclaimed land. The reason why we have this land available for the development is we just built it. We created it. It didn't exist back in the 1980s. By 1994, the project was well underway, and by 1997, when the handover, in 1998, the opening of the airport, government had to take a decision, well, what do we do with the land? Of course, a lot of it will be used for housing, as you've seen, office development, almost exclusively high-rise, I might add. But it cannot all be high-rise. This is something I think people have to understand. In a high-rise city, it can't be all high-rise. So what we're doing is creating a destination for visitors, business, and particularly that last word, talent. The key issue, I think, for people in Hong Kong is what's the value of an investment in culture and arts? It's very difficult to articulate. It's not so difficult. You're building a bank or you're building a building for banks. You can put a dollar value on that. But how do we articulate the dollar value of a culture and arts facility? I think the best way is to say it's because it gives another opportunity for people to work, for people to create, and for people to enjoy. These are things that are very difficult to value, but are very important. So let's start with some of the basics. The destination. Well, Hong Kong, as I'm sure you all know, is a fantastic destination in itself. But it's within Hong Kong, there are certain areas, and you will have seen that earlier from Eric's very interesting presentation, that are simply not buildable. So it's all concentrated. And we are at the heart of the concentration of the urban district. And we're linked in, again, as you've heard, to China through the high-speed rail network and through the airport connections. But beyond that, frankly, because of the airport connections, you heard 90% of the tenants in this building alone are from overseas. We have to recognize that we're also an international destination. So what we're doing is building in a district which has, which way is this one around? I'm not sure if this is working. Not working. Anyway, the top part is all heavy density urban development. It's a mix of public and private housing developments, includes a lot of, obviously, offices and residential, but there's industrial areas around the typhoon shelter. The new development areas, highlighted by the big red dots of the MTR, are what create the unique opportunities here, that connectivity. But it's more than that. There are opportunities for land transport activities as well, particularly through the Western Harbour crossing. So we connect to the whole of Hong Kong, very, very conveniently. Beyond that, of course, we connect to Hong Kong itself. And one of the things we're looking at is how do you bring people in a diverse way? It doesn't have to be by the traditional means. Let's use the harbour. We're part of the harbour. We're right on the harbour front. Ridiculous to ignore it. Let's use the harbour. And of course, we're on the MTR line to the airport. What I want to be able to do is every second visitor who gets on a plane and arrives in Hong Kong, gets off a train, who arrives from China in the high-speed rail link, stays in the district. I want to grab them as they get off the train and say, we've got things for you, stay! That's the objective, and we can do that. Because we will connect neighboring areas. If we look at ourselves just as a district without reality, without relationship to the surrounding areas, we're wasting our time. A cultural district, if we talk about London particularly, London really serves the home counties and Europe. London in itself, without that hinterland, is zero. We have to have the same attitude. So what are we building? Well, just very briefly, from essentially the eastern end to the western end, we're starting with the CTBUH Center, which is Chinese opera, and you can see that if you look down from that window. Then there'll be medium theatres, music centres, music theatres, which will be more commercial, cats, that sort of thing. A great theatre, which will be the opera and the more traditional performances. Then a museum, and then a big park, and then at the top end we're doing eventually an exhibition and convention facility. So we're going to have a huge range of different programming opportunities within the district. So let me just briefly take you through these and relate it back to the tall building issue. Let's start with the smallest building on the site. This one's actually opened this year, so I'm very proud. We've actually got something opened. After something like 17 years of discussion, there is a facility there. Please come along and have a look. We've got a great exhibition on at the moment by local Hong Kong artist, Zhang Qinhua. It's on to the end of the week. Come along. That's the advertising bit out of the way. The second facility is the CTBUH Center. That'll be opening 2018. The challenge here is that underneath we have an MTR line. An MTR line, noise and vibration, doesn't really sit very nicely with the performances of a CTBUH, of a Cantonese opera. The solution, as I'm afraid with many things in Hong Kong, is let's lift it up. So the theatre is actually going to be 20, 30, 25 meters in the air. It's a typical Hong Kong solution to the density problems that we have. We have to build up. So even our theatres are no longer on the ground level, they're raised. And it's indeed not going to be just one theatre, which will be very nice. It's about 1,100 seats. But we'll also have a plaza area also activated for performances. And because the traditional Cantonese opera performance takes about 5 hours, and with the modern attitude towards attention span of particularly young people of being about 5 minutes, we need to do something about that. So what we're doing is this, what we're calling a tea house. So people can come in, we'll put a quick program, 45 minutes. You can have some tea, you can have some dim sum, you can be introduced to the art form, and then you can go on your way. So we're trying to respond to the reality of what we have. Again, you have to be flexible. Of course, and I'm sure some of the lower floor ICC tenants are not going to be too happy about this, right in front we're building a multi-story museum. Another reality in Hong Kong. In fact, this is the biggest museum construction project in the world at the moment. It's going to be as big as Tate Modern, if you have that sort of reference. It is huge. Designed by Herzog and de Meuron, it will be a spectacular building in itself. All of the gallery spaces on the lower floors, on the lower platform, with all the office spaces and a separate conservation building. The interesting thing about this is, of course, that It is a museum for visual culture. It will cover both art, design and architecture. So if any of you architects in the building want to talk to us, we're very happy to take models and design drawings, and moving images. So it's got to be a multi-purpose museum. It's got to have the flexibility to take into account all of these different potential uses. The next one, also under construction. The museum will be finished in 2019. The park area will be, in total, we have to, out of the 40 hectares of the site, get about 21 hectares of green and open space. The park itself will be about 13 hectares. Within the park, we have the pavilion, which I've said is already open, but we will also have performance venues, retail and dining opportunities, an indoor performance venue with about 450 seats and as a black box theatre, as well as an outdoor performance venue for about 1,000 people. We're already running a small park, what we're calling the Nursery Park, and we're trying to change the whole approach to parks in Hong Kong. Traditionally, the government-run parks, you can't play ball, you can't bring dogs, you can't bicycle, you can't fly kites, you can't enjoy yourself. We're changing the whole logic of this to say, bring your dog, fly your kite, play the ball, bring your family, sit on the grass, of course, that's usually verboten. We want people to enjoy this space because we realize, looking around here, there aren't many opportunities to do that. So the logic of what we're trying to do really is change not just the physical appearance of the place, but the logic of how certain facilities are run. The other thing we're now working on is the Lyric Theatre. Again, a multi-story solution to a space problem, in that we will have 3 theatres within this complex, 1,450-seat main theatre, which is primarily for dance, a 600-seat theatre, and a 200-seat theatre stacked. Typical Hong Kong solution to the problem. How do we get as much into this site as we can? Of course, the challenge will be, as it will be for the CTBUH Centre, how do we get people up and down? How do we get the audience in and out, particularly out when they're all emptying at the same time? So we have a lot of physical challenges that we need to look at. And we also need to link that in to the adjacent area. So the Lyric Theatre, the museum, and the environment all have to be properly integrated. More importantly, we need to link into this complex here, because clearly, with 30,000 tenants and residents here, we want them all in the district. We want them to use the park. We want them to come to the museum, see a show, enjoy the retail and dining, sit on the grass. We've got to have that link. So we're building a new bridge linking into here. The concept, which I'm sure many of you will be aware Norman Foster came up with, is an integrated multi-level context. It's the Hong Kong solution, where everything is built upon each other. The retail at the ground level, above that, the office spaces, above that, we may have more dining opportunities. For example, in the museum block, the top 3 floors will be dining. Best view, why not? Let's sell it. We've got to have some income somehow. The retail will also then be intermixed with the culture and the arts facilities. So high-rise, even in cultural sphere, is natural. In terms of the development mix, as you can see, in fact, the intention has always been that more than 50% will be on the cultural arts and open space opportunities. It is a large site, 40 hectares, but we're not using it to the normal high density of Hong Kong development. The density here is very, very low by Hong Kong standards, very low. And again, it's thanks to the government's foresight that we've been able to come up with this concept to balance the rest of the development in the town. The other interesting thing is that all the traffic will be underground. All of the deliveries, all the parking, all of the services underground. So at the grade level, which will actually be 3 stories up, it'll be a walking district. Again, we're trying to get the human scale. to bring it back down to us, to the people who live there, work there, play there, entertain there, spectate there. That's what we want. We want them to be the focus. To do that, of course, we have to do placemaking. Now, we are saying it's placemaking through culture. We're embedding the arts, culture, creativity in all aspects of what we're doing. Every building has to have a particularly art or culture-related theme, not just the theatres. We want gallery spaces. We want artist workshops. We want even the office spaces to have some opportunity for art or cultural facilities, art or cultural activities. But beyond that, we've got to have regard to the people. You know, we will have large-scale outdoor exhibitions. We'll have indoor exhibitions. We're going to have, we already have, bike hire. Again, it's almost unique in Hong Kong. We have performances. We want this place to be activated. All of the open space will be a performance space. Doesn't matter whether it's in the green, in the park itself, or whether it's in one of the small squares, or whether it's along the avenues, there'll be something to see. To start that, we've done a registration system for street performers. First time in Hong Kong. And it's proved to be very popular. We've got over 300 people and groups registered in the first year. And we've got all sorts, from jugglers to singers, from magicians to bongo players. You've got all sorts registering, and it's fantastic. Because we are not just building an infrastructure project. That is not what this is about. We're talking about a whole range of venues, public spaces. We're talking about having to build communities and audiences. Because let's be frank, this is going to represent a huge expansion in the capacity to put on art and culture performances. Where does the audience come from that? More importantly, where do the performers come from? We have to build that. In doing so, we've got to build the teams and the talent that will allow this facility to develop and establish itself as the international center that we want it to be. In doing so, we've got to rebuild public trust in what we're doing. Of course, we've got to engender new ways of thinking, because quite honestly, what we're trying to do is not being done anywhere else in the world. So what are the key elements? We see 4, I think, that will be the measure of our success. The first and most important, and I think I've demonstrated it, we must be accessible. Absolutely. If you can't get here, what's the point of building it? So it's got to be accessible. Secondly, people must be engaged. They must come here not because it's something to be passive about. I want them to be engaged because they're actively interested in what we're doing. They want to be here to do something. A spectator, fine, but why don't you try some of the programs that we'll be offering? Of course, it has to be comfortable. There's no point in offering something if people come along, they can't find seats, they can't find restaurants, can't find bars, they can't just find a cup of tea. It's got to be comfortable. And most important of all, to my mind, it's got to be sociable. It's got to be where people want to come to meet each other. That's the human experience. It's the shared experience that we're trying to get to. It's not about giving them a place and then expecting them just to be individuals. We want the sociability to come out. The ways that we've already done that so far through the Nursery Park, the green chairs, let's just give you a small example. We thought, it's a temporary park, we don't want to invest very much, so let's just buy some chairs, see how they survive, see what happens. We'll probably lose half of them. We put in 30 chairs. 3 months later, we had 32 chairs. I don't know where they came from. They're breeding or something, which is fine. You know, that's a natural part of the world. But it shows that if you respect people, they will respect what you're doing. Trust, and that is one of the most important things. We're doing the Smart Bike program. We hire bikes so people can get out. We're trying to encourage people to get engaged. Bring your children along. We have small bikes, we have large bikes. It's not something that Hong Kong is very well known for, to be frank. We need to do more about that. So we thought we'd start. We encourage pets. Everything that you see here has taken place in the park. The most recent one, apparently, is someone brought a lizard on a leash to I don't know why, but he had the lizard on a leash. I thought the rabbit on a leash was pretty good going, but you know, these things happen. We run programs. This is the free space happening. Every second weekend in the month, we have a program on the site. It comprises performances, it comprises marketplaces. We're trying to get people to be aware of where we are, even before we have anything to offer them. Placemaking, as we see it, has to be a multifaceted approach to the planning, design, and management of public space. It must enrich the quality of the city. It's about fostering communities. It's about supporting the local economy. It's about attracting new business. Most important to my mind, we can contribute to the government's objectives in public health terms, and of course, civic and youth engagement. To my mind, what we're building is not for me, it's not even for my children, it's for my grandchildren. And I want them to come in here at the age of 6 months, 8 months, 2 years, and we'll have something to offer them, because they will be the future audience that we need to get. And of course, if we can improve the environment, that's not a bad objective as well. Thank you all very much.